Tonight, in this podcast, we explore the quiet space where money and memory meet.
And it is a space most of us have occupied at one time or another, even if we rarely talk about it out loud.
Yeah. It's the hidden architecture behind, some of our most agonizing late-night decisions.
It really is.
I want to start by just speaking directly to you, the person listening to this deep dive right now. We know that money is already this deeply taboo subject in our culture.
Oh, absolutely.
And we also know that past relationships, breakups, the lingering ghosts of the people we used to love, that is also a highly guarded, incredibly vulnerable subject.
Right. You put those two things together, and it creates this deeply human experience that often carries a really heavy burden of silence.
Exactly. So as we get into this, I just want to establish right out of the gate that this is a safe, completely non-judgmental space.
Yes. We are just exploring. There's no right or wrong here.
Right. We're just trying to understand the human condition a little bit better and perhaps give you some grace for the things you thought you were completely alone in feeling.
Because that grace is so necessary. I mean, the human condition is inherently messy. We like to think of our finances as these rational spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, like it's all just math.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we want to see our relationships as neatly closed chapters in a book. We want to believe that when a relationship ends, the financial and emotional ties are severed cleanly.
But they're not.
No. Reality and the way our brains are actually wired to process connection is, well, it's vastly more complicated.
To really ground this, I want to paint a picture for you based on one of the scenarios from our source material. So imagine this scene.
Okay.
You are sitting on the edge of your bed. The room is totally dark. You are staring at the harsh blue light of your phone screen.
I think we've all been there in some capacity.
Right. And you need $5,500 to save the house you've worked your entire life for. You're behind on payments, the warnings have come and gone, and time is absolutely up.
The panic in that situation is just, it's unimaginable.
It's suffocating. You have exhausted every single logical option. You've looked at high-interest personal loans. You've asked your immediate family.
And no one can help.
Right. Someone even suggested to you, with a straight face no less, that you should go sell your blood plasma or start driving for Uber to make it up in 2 weeks.
Which is just, I mean, it's a terrifying reflection of how we view survival right now.
Yeah,
It highlights the sheer desperation of the moment. Mathematically closing a $5,500 gap by driving a few hours in the evenings or sitting in a plasma clinic, it's impossible in that time frame.
Right, the math doesn't work.
No. The walls are closing in, and your nervous system is in full fight-or-flight mode.
The panic is setting in, literally tightening your throat.
Yeah.
But, and here is the twist, the only person in the world who could effortlessly help you, who could write that check right now without even checking their balance and save your home, is someone from your past, an ex-partner.
Wow. Okay. That changes everything.
Right. You have their number in your phone. You are staring at their name in your contacts. You could text them right now.
But you hesitate.
Exactly. If you do, you keep the house. If you don't, you lose the house. And yet the idea of typing out that message, of sending that text, it makes your stomach completely drop.
Because it is a visceral, full-body reaction. It's not a logical calculation about real estate anymore.
Yeah.
It is a profound physiological rejection.
Yes. Or let's flip the script completely and look at the other side of the coin.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you are the one receiving a text. You're just going about your day, maybe making coffee, walking the dog, and your phone buzzes. It's your ex.
Okay, the tables are turned.
Right. And their life is currently decaying into this, dumpster fire environment. Maybe they are struggling with a severe addiction. They've lost their job. They're back living with their parents, completely ignoring reality.
A really heavy situation.
And they're asking you for a simple $200 electronic transfer. Now, you have the money. You are a good saver. You're financially stable. And sending $200 wouldn't impact your life or your budget in the slightest.
Because to you, in a purely mathematical sense, $200 is a negligible amount. It's a rounding error in your monthly budget.
Exactly. But the moment you see that text pop up on your lock screen, I want you to focus entirely on the feeling inside your body, the sudden tightening of your chest, the shallow breathing.
The dread.
Yes, that quiet creeping dread that starts in the pit of your stomach and just radiates outward. There is this strange, undeniable gravitational pull of a past relationship colliding violently with the cold, hard reality of money.
It's a collision of two worlds that our modern society desperately tells us we should keep completely separate: the heart and the wallet.
So the implied question here, the core mystery we really have to unpack in this deep dive is why? Why does an electronic transfer of $200 feel like the heaviest weight in the world?
It's such a great question.
Right. Why does the idea of asking an ex for help to save your home feel almost worse than actually packing up your belongings and losing the home?
Because logically, it makes no sense.
It makes zero sense. I was looking at one of our sources, and a commentator noted something fascinating. They said that a current partner would likely be infinitely more threatened by you borrowing money from an ex than by you actually losing your shared house and having to sleep on a friend's couch.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly telling.
Why on earth is that the case? Why is the money more threatening than homelessness?
Well, we have to first validate this visceral human experience before we even touch the behavioral studies. It makes complete sense that you feel that tightening in your chest.
It does.
Absolutely. Our wallets, our bank accounts, our financial ledgers, they are deeply, inextricably entangled with our memories and our emotional attachments.
Even though we pretend they aren't.
Right. We want to believe money is sterile, like it's just this neutral tool. But it is deeply porous. It absorbs the meaning we give it.
So anyone listening right now who has agonized over a Venmo request from someone they used to love, someone they used to be with, they aren't crazy for feeling this way.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
You are responding to something incredibly real and fundamentally human.
I want to give this a name because if this is a universal human experience, we really need terminology for it. In the behavioral science literature we've been reviewing, psychologists have a specific way of framing this.
We do.
They call it the social emotion of debt, and sometimes it's referred to in the research as emotional accounting.
The social emotion of debt. It is a brilliant way to frame it because it immediately strips away the illusion that we're just dealing with currency.
Right. It forces you to look at the people involved.
Exactly. Borrowing or lending money with an ex-partner is never, ever just a math problem. It is never an amoral, strictly economic transaction.
Because there's history there.
Yes. When you are dealing with someone from your romantic past, exchanging money is a profound social interaction. It is the physical, tangible manifestation of an emotional tie that hasn't fully severed.
That is such a crucial realization. So that is what this is called. It's not just a loan, it's an emotional ledger.
Emotional ledger. I love that term for it.
That is a huge aha moment for me. Because if you view it as an emotional ledger, then the discomfort, the dread, or even that strange lingering compulsion you feel to help them makes complete sense.
It does. It validates the entire experience.
Money in this context isn't currency at all. It is just a proxy for attachment.
When you transfer that $200 to the ex who is struggling, or when you sit in the dark contemplating asking for that $5,500 to save your house, you are not engaging with a bank. You are making an entry on an emotional ledger.
And the brain treats those differently.
Vastly differently. The human brain tracks emotional ledgers with so much more rigor and intensity than it will ever track a checking account balance.
Before we move into the actual science of why our brains do this, we want to take a gentle pause.
Yeah, let's just sit with that for a second.
If this feeling of emotional accounting resonates with you, if you have ever sat staring at a text from an ex asking for money, or if you've been the one typing out that desperate plea, deleting it and typing it again, we invite you to subscribe to Leone Patterns.
Please do.
Leave a comment sharing your own experiences. We want to ensure that this community feels like a shared, safe space. You aren't alone in this.
You really aren't. And to truly grasp why this emotional ledger holds such immense power over us, we have to look under the hood of human behavior.
Let's do it. What does the research say?
Well, the research from the Human Behavior and Evolution Society, specifically the extensive work conducted by researchers like Maria Bracken and Hugo Mercier, provides an incredible lens for this.
I read their work for this deep dive. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. They spent a significant amount of time researching how informal borrowing triggers evolved social emotions.
Let's really dig into that methodology, because when I was reading their research, the phrase evolved social emotions really struck me. It implies that this isn't just a cultural quirk of the modern digital banking era.
No, not at all. It's much, much older than that.
This is something deeply hardwired into our evolutionary biology. They focus heavily on a concept called the welfare trade-off ratio, or the WTR. I found this absolutely fascinating.
The WTR is foundational to understanding this.
Basically, as I understand it, the WTR is an internal subconscious calculator in the human cognitive system. It is constantly tracking the costs we feel we should pay to benefit someone else, and conversely, the costs we feel they should pay to benefit us.
Let's consider where that comes from. If we go back thousands of years to early human communities, survival depended entirely on the group.
Right, you couldn't survive alone.
You had to know, implicitly, who in your tribe was willing to share their resources, their food, their fire, their protection, with you, and who you were willing to sacrifice for in return.
So it's a mutual survival pact.
Yes. The brain developed the welfare trade-off ratio as a survival mechanism. It is a continuous background calculation running in your head.
Yeah.
How much of my own comfort or resources am I willing to sacrifice for your well-being, and are you willing to do the same for me?
So it's an evolutionary ledger of trust and mutual aid. And what the research points out is that when an X asks for money, it forces your brain to run this ancient WTR calculation, but it throws the system into total chaos.
Because the categories don't match up anymore.
Exactly. You are calculating fairness and attachment simultaneously. The brain is asking, wait, is this person still in my survival cohort?
And that cognitive friction triggers intense feelings.
Right. For example, the researchers noted that if a loan imposes a very low cost on the lender, say, borrowing from someone with immense wealth, and delivers a high benefit to the borrower, like saving their house from foreclosure, it signals a high WTR.
And the brain processes this and generates positive emotions, like profound gratitude.
But the inverse is where the creeping dread comes in.
Yes, the dread. Let's talk about that.
If the loan imposes a high cost on you, maybe not financially, but emotionally, and the benefit to the X is low or even destructive, like funding an addiction, it indicates a wildly unbalanced low WTR.
And that generates acute anger, guilt, or shame.
That perfectly explains the text message scenario we talked about earlier. When the X, who is living in a dumpster fire environment, asks for $200, your brain's WTR alarm bells are just screaming.
Because the cost is too high.
The cost to you isn't the $200. The cost to you is the emotional toll of re-engaging with their chaos.
Yep.
And the benefit to them is functionally low because you know the money will likely be used destructively. The math doesn't add up, and your evolutionary biology responds with that heavy, anxious dread in your chest.
It is a brilliant system, really.
Yeah.
But to fully understand the dread, we have to layer this evolutionary calculus with our psychological development.
Okay, where does psychology come in?
This brings us to betrayal trauma theory, which was introduced by Dr. Jennifer Freyd and builds heavily on the foundational attachment theory work of John Bowlby.
Bowlby's work is so central to everything we know about human connection. He studied how infants attach to their primary caregivers for basic survival.
Right, the infant needs the caregiver to literally stay alive.
If an infant is scared, they seek proximity to the caregiver to regulate their nervous system and find safety. As adults, we transfer that primary attachment onto our romantic partners. Our partner becomes our safe harbor.
And that is where Dr. Freyd's betrayal trauma theory is so illuminating. The theory posits that when trust is profoundly violated by a partner we depend on for our emotional survival, it severely disrupts that core attachment system.
So the safe harbor becomes dangerous.
Exactly. It creates a terrifying psychological paradox. The person you are wired to run toward for safety is suddenly the source of your terror and pain.
Oh, that's heavy. How does the brain even process that?
To cope with this impossible contradiction, the mind often engages in avoidance, emotional numbing, or literal forgetting. We try to block out the betrayal to maintain some semblance of psychological stability.
Okay, I want to push back on this just a little, or maybe offer an analogy to see if I am grasping the mechanics here.
Please do.
If the relationship is entirely over and the betrayal is in the past, shouldn't the attachment be gone? Shouldn't the safe harbor just be demolished?
You would think so, logically, yes.
It sounds like this welfare trade-off ratio, combined with the lingering attachment, is acting like a phantom limb of a relationship.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
You keep feeling the agonizing urge to balance a ledger or nurse a wound for an arm that isn't even there anymore.
The phantom limb is perhaps the most accurate metaphor possible for this phenomenon.
Really?
Yes. Think about it. When someone loses a physical limb, the nerve endings in the brain that correspond to that arm don't just disappear.
Right. They still fire.
Exactly. They still signal pain or itching or the sensation of movement, even though the conscious mind can plainly see the arm is gone.
Wow.
The relationship is over. Your conscious mind knows this. It engages in avoidance. You tell yourself, I don't want to talk to them. I want to move on. They were terrible for me.
But the subconscious isn't on board.
No. Your subconscious attachment system, the part of your brain that bonded with them for survival, remains hyperactivated.
You still feel the phantom limb. You still feel the intense evolutionary pull of that WTR, evaluating your responsibility toward them, even as your conscious brain is screaming to walk away.
That is the exact mechanism that explains why you can be furious with an ex, completely aware they were toxic for your well-being, and yet still feel this paralyzing, agonizing guilt when they ask you for a small favor or a loan.
The brain is fighting itself.
Yes, your conscious, logical brain says an emphatic no, but your deep attachment system is frantically whispering, but we protect our group. We have to balance the ledger.
I was reading another piece of research for this deep dive that adds an entirely new layer of complexity to this phantom limb feeling. The International Journal of Creative Research Thoughts published a fascinating paper exploring how different genders process this romantic trauma and betrayal differently.
Yes, that research really colors how we handle the emotional ledger on a practical level.
It's a critical layer. The research strongly indicates that due to deeply ingrained social conditioning, men and women often take wildly divergent paths when coping with the emotional fallout of a severed attachment.
Let's break that down. According to the data, men often adopt avoidance-based coping mechanisms.
Which looks like what?
Well, we see higher rates of emotional suppression and withdrawal. Because social norms historically discourage male vulnerability, men often struggle to express the raw pain of the phantom limb.
So they just shut it down.
Right. They might find it nearly impossible to articulate that they still feel the attachment. So when an ex reaches out asking for money, a man might completely suppress the emotional impact.
Treat it like a business transaction.
Yes, he might try to handle the transaction with extreme, almost robotic pragmatism. Or alternatively, he might withdraw completely and ignore the text to protect himself from the terrifying vulnerability of acknowledging that the emotional ledger is still open.
The avoidance is a shield.
Precisely. On the other hand, the research shows that women tend to rely on emotion-focused coping.
Meaning they lean into it more.
Yes, they lean into social support, and they engage heavily in what psychologists call meaning-making.
Meaning-making, I like that. What does that entail?
They want to understand the narrative. They ruminate. They ask, what went wrong? What does this mean about my worth? What does this request for money signify?
Which means they feel the sheer weight of that $200 request much more acutely in the immediate moment.
Much more acutely, yes.
A woman might stare at that text for 2 hours, agonizing over her boundaries, analyzing what it means for her healing process, discussing it in a group chat, trying to make sense of the emotional ledger.
It intensifies the initial distress, certainly. But the research also notes that this active meaning-making often leads to greater post-traumatic growth.
So it pays off in the long run.
It does. It leads to the establishment of much firmer relational boundaries down the line, whereas avoidance simply buries the ledger without ever closing it.
This brings me to one of the most counterintuitive psychological principles I found in our source material. And I think it is the key to understanding why lending money to an ex is so dangerous.
It completely turns everything we assume about doing favors upside down.
Yes. It's called the Benjamin Franklin effect. I've read about it in other contexts, but applying it to the emotional ledger of a past relationship is just mind-blowing.
The Benjamin Franklin effect is a classic concept in cognitive psychology. The premise is simple but profound. Doing someone a favor, like lending them money, actually makes you, the person doing the favor, more likely to do them another favor in the future.
Let's pause and really look at the mechanics of that because it defies common sense.
It really does.
We usually think that if I do a favor for you, you owe me. I have the power, and you should feel indebted to me. But the Benjamin Franklin effect says that by helping you, I become more attached to you.
Exactly.
I end up liking you more because I helped you. How does the brain justify that?
It comes down to cognitive dissonance. The brain absolutely despises holding two contradictory beliefs at the same time.
It wants consistency.
Right. So if you lend $200 to an ex that you claim to be completely over, your brain experiences immense friction. I don't care about this person, but I just gave up my hard-earned resources for them.
That doesn't compute.
No. So to resolve this uncomfortable dissonance, the brain rewrites your internal narrative. It retroactively rationalizes the action.
How so?
It says, well, I just gave this person $200. I wouldn't do that for a stranger. I must still care about them. Therefore, they are valuable to me.
Wow. The investment creates the tether. That is incredible. Lending that $200 isn't a one-off transaction to get them off your back. You are physically, neurologically reopening a pathway of investment and attachment. You are cementing the bond.
By attempting to buy your way out of the immediate guilt or the awkwardness of saying no,
Mm.
you are inadvertently signaling to your own brain that the emotional ledger is still active. You keep the phantom limb alive.
So we have all these underlying mechanisms: the welfare trade-off ratio calculating survival, the betrayal trauma creating a phantom limb, gendered coping mechanisms dictating our reactions, and the Benjamin Franklin effect secretly deepening our attachments.
That's a lot of hidden architecture.
It is. But how does this actually show up on a random Tuesday? We need to transition from the laboratory to the living room. Let's look at the quiet, everyday patterns people fall into without ever noticing what's driving them.
The theories are only as valuable as our ability to see them operating in our daily lives. And the specific stories from the source material provide perfect examples of these patterns in motion.
The first pattern is something I see everywhere. I call it the first and last time illusion.
Oh, this is a very common one.
We saw a stark example of this in a Reddit thread from our sources. The original poster lent $200 to an ex who was severely addicted to cocaine.
A really difficult situation.
He was living with his parents, not paying rent, completely spiraling. She knew logically that he was a mess and that the money was going straight to his addiction, but she lent it to him anyway.
Against all her better judgment.
Right. And then there was a parallel story from Twisted Sifter. A young woman is asked by her ex for money to pay for his college applications because his family refuses to support him.
Which pulls at the heartstrings.
Exactly. She doesn't have it, so she asks her mother for the cash to give to the ex. The mother reluctantly agrees, but issues this stern warning. This is the first and last time, because money spoils relationships.
The mother was profoundly right about money altering the nature of relationships. But she was entirely wrong about the last time part.
Why is that?
Because this pattern is deeply intertwined with the savior complex. It is an unconscious attempt to hold on to a decaying relationship by making yourself indispensable.
The Reddit user actually had incredible self-awareness about this in hindsight. She wrote in her post, "My excuse to facilitate a flash economic borrow is that maybe I was trying to hold on in a potentially dead relationship."
That is profound insight.
She literally used a Venmo transfer as a tool to soften the brutal finality of the breakup. She paid a toll to delay her own grief.
And that is the tragic crux of the illusion. The borrower always offers a timeline. I just need this until Friday. I'll pay you back on payday.
Which makes it feel safe.
Right. It creates a false sense of a closed loop. But the lender, deep down in their gut, feels that creeping dread because their WTR knows they're establishing a habit.
It's not a bridge loan.
No, the money isn't really a bridge loan to get to Friday.
Yeah.
By lending the money, you guarantee that you have a socially acceptable reason to stay in contact.
Hey, just checking in on that $200. It gives you permission to reach out. It keeps the tether alive without forcing you to admit you just missed them.
Exactly.
And as we learned from the Benjamin Franklin effect, it's an illusion that it's the last time, because once you invest, your brain resolves the cognitive dissonance by convincing you that you care, priming you to invest again the next time they ask.
It becomes a cycle of reinforced attachment disguised as financial aid.
That leads directly into the second pattern, which happens when the money starts changing hands, but the attachment is still there. Let's call this the silent watcher.
The silent watcher? Very modern pattern.
This is such a modern phenomenon, born entirely out of the digital age. This insight comes from Coach Lee, a relationship expert cited in our sources. The silent watcher is the ex who constantly views your social media stories, watches your TikToks, checks your LinkedIn profile, but never, ever communicates.
No interaction whatsoever.
There are no likes, no comments, no direct messages. They are just a silent, persistent ghost in your view metrics.
If we look at this through the lens we established earlier, attachment theory and betrayal trauma, the silent watcher makes total sense.
How so?
They are engaging in a behavior designed to reduce their own nervous system anxiety and establish a baseline of emotional safety from a distance.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that. How does an ex watching my Instagram story of a mundane Tuesday morning coffee actually reduce their anxiety?
Because they are gathering critical emotional intelligence without assuming any of the risk of vulnerability.
Ah, gathering data.
Yes. Their attachment system is still active. The phantom limb is itching. They want to know, are you moving on? Are you falling apart? Are you dating someone new? Do you look happy?
They want to know where they stand.
Exactly. They are trying to gauge if their historical place in your world is fading. Watching silently is an incredibly low-risk way to satiate that attachment drive.
They get the reward without the risk.
Yes, it gives them the dopamine hit of connection, seeing your face, knowing what you were doing without any relational responsibility.
Emotional attachment without relational responsibility. That phrasing is so powerful. They get to feel involved in your life without the terrifying risk of you looking at them and saying, "Why are you checking up on me? We broke up."
They are essentially testing the waters to see if you are safe. If your posts seem angry, bitter, or erratic, their fear of rejection rises, and they stay silent.
But if you look fine.
If you look stable, calm, and happy, their fear lowers.
And here's where it ties directly back to our core topic of the emotional ledger. According to the sources, when the silent watcher finally decides they feel safe enough to break the silence, they rarely do it with a big, sweeping emotional declaration.
No, almost never.
They don't text, "I've been watching you and I miss you." They almost always initiate contact with a highly pragmatic, transactional request.
They will ask for help structuring a college statement of purpose. They will ask if you can look over their resume for a job in your field, or, crucially, they will ask for a small, seemingly insignificant loan.
Because asking you to proofread a cover letter or asking to borrow $50 for gas feels infinitely less vulnerable than admitting they are lonely and can't stop thinking about you.
The request for a favor is a Trojan horse. It allows them to initiate contact under the guise of necessity.
Wow.
But what they're actually doing is testing your welfare trade-off ratio. They are asking subconsciously, will they still invest in me? Am I still worthy of their resources?
And if you say yes.
If you do the favor, if you rewrite the resume, if you lend the $50, you signal clearly that the emotional ledger is still open and operational.
That is wild to think about. They aren't asking for money because they need money. They are asking for money because they need validation that the invisible tether hasn't been completely severed.
This brings us to a third, incredibly common pattern that involves a much more deeply entangled ledger. Let's look at the slow untangling of the sliders.
I was reading the sociological study by Brittany Bunkers, published in the CTMJ, that coined this term. The concept of sliders versus deciders completely shifts how we understand modern relationships.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
The research found that a massive percentage of couples don't sit down and deliberately decide to move in together and merge their lives. Instead, they slide into cohabitation entirely out of convenience.
Just kind of drifting into it.
Right. A roommate moves out, a lease is up, someone relocates for a job, or they just realize they're spending 5 nights a week at one apartment anyway, so they might as well save on rent.
The sliding mechanism is purely pragmatic in the beginning. But the psychological trap is that because they slid into this profound enmeshment without a deep, deliberate, communicative commitment process, they lack the foundational tools to handle conflict.
They skip the groundwork.
Exactly. When the relationship inevitably breaks down, often due to a gradual, agonizing communication breakdown or sudden infidelity, the disengagement process is incredibly messy.
Because they're tied together everywhere.
Right. They don't have the clear legal framework of a divorce to divide assets, but their lives are just as entangled financially.
Which leaves us with these bizarre real-world artifacts of a dead relationship, the lingering entries on the emotional ledger. You hear about people who are broken up, hate each other, but are still paying half the rent on a shared lease for an apartment they haven't slept in for 6 months.
Yes.
Or they are still on a shared cell phone family plan because it's cheaper, even though it means they can see each other's data usage.
It creates an agonizing state of limbo. And perhaps the most emotionally fraught example of this from our sources is what Chris Sider, a relationship recovery coach, refers to as the pet surgery exception.
This one is so difficult because it involves an innocent third party. Let's say you and your ex adopted a dog together. Sparky.
Okay, Sparky.
You break up, it's messy, and your ex takes Sparky. You haven't spoken in 6 months. Then, out of nowhere, you get a call. Sparky has a severe issue, needs a $3,000 emergency surgery, and your ex absolutely cannot afford it. They are calling you for the money.
It presents the ultimate ethical and emotional dilemma. Logically, your own financial well-being and your distance from the toxic relationship should come first.
But logically goes out the window here.
Completely. Ethically and emotionally, the idea of allowing a dog you love to suffer or be put down feels monstrous.
I really want to look at the nuance of this, though. If old Sparky needs surgery and your ex can't pay for it, isn't stepping in to pay just a highly convenient, socially bulletproof excuse to stay in contact?
It very well could be.
Isn't it just the ultimate sanctioned way to keep the emotional ledger open? You get to be the hero,
and you guarantee that you will be in their life, at least until the dog recovers. We can see that playing out in so many ways. It explores the gray area of our motivations perfectly. Sometimes it truly is just genuine ethics. You love the animal, you have the means, and you want to prevent suffering.
Of course.
But very often, beneath that noble surface, it is the social debt, keeping the door propped wide open. It is a culturally sanctioned way to remain deeply relevant in an ex's life.
You become the savior.
Yes, you become the savior. As you said earlier, you couldn't save the relationship, but you can save the dog.
And the research points out a fascinating endpoint to this pattern. For these sliders who remain entangled in these financial obligations, paying the lease, staying on the phone plan, paying the vet bills, what finally cuts a tether, it's almost never an internal realization.
No, it rarely is.
The friendship or financial support usually stops abruptly only when one of them gets serious with a new partner.
Because a new, committed partner will absolutely not tolerate an open emotional ledger with an ex. It is a direct threat to the new attachment bond.
Which takes us right back to the beginning of our deep dive. Why the current partner is more threatened by you borrowing $200 from an ex than by you losing the house.
It all connects.
The current partner knows, on a deep instinctual level, that the ledger isn't just numbers on a screen, it is intimacy. It is a live wire of attachment.
It is the ghost of the relationship, still pulling energy.
This brings us to what I believe is the most important part of this entire conversation, the reframe.
Yes, this is crucial.
Because if you are listening to this right now, in your car or at your desk or sitting on the edge of your bed, and you are seeing yourself in these patterns, you might be feeling a deep, suffocating sense of foolishness or shame.
It's very easy to feel that way.
Maybe you are the person from that Reddit thread. Maybe you lent money to an ex who treated you terribly, who lied to you, who used you. You told yourself that love made you blind, and now you are beating yourself up, feeling like it was the worst, stupidest mistake of your life because they will never, ever pay you back. You feel like a sucker.
And the shame just spirals.
Or maybe you are the person staring at the $5,500 foreclosure notice. You genuinely considered asking your ex for money to save your house, and you felt immense, crushing shame that you couldn't handle your own life. You felt pathetic for even looking at their name in your contacts, wondering if they still cared enough to save you.
We need to gently but firmly reframe this entirely. If you lent that money knowing it was a bad idea, or if you desperately wanted to ask for that help when you were out of options, it is not a flaw in your character.
That's not.
No. It does not make you weak. It does not make you stupid. And it certainly does not mean you are broken.
Society is so quick to label it as foolish or weak. Why can't you just move on? But why isn't it a flaw?
Because it is a profound reflection of your humanity. By feeling that pull to help or that desire to be helped, you are responding to a deep, ancient evolutionary drive to protect a bond.
The WTR we talked about.
Yes, you are attempting to honor a past attachment. The desire to keep that ledger open or to balance it or to seek safety within it isn't a failure of your boundaries. It is proof of your capacity for deep connection and empathy.
That is so incredibly powerful. It is proof of your capacity for connection.
When you lent that $200 to the ex who didn't deserve it, you weren't being a fool. You were operating on the deepest levels of the welfare trade-off ratio.
Your brain was just doing its job.
Exactly. Your brain recognized that this person was once a core part of your inner circle, and they were in pain. You were acting out of a deeply ingrained, beautiful sense of human loyalty, even if it was misplaced in the modern context.
So, to the person listening right now, you are not broken for caring. You are not pathetic for hoping someone else still cares. You are just beautifully, messily human. The fact that your heart is still tracking the emotional ledger just means that you loved them. And there is absolutely no shame in having loved someone.
None at all.
As we start to pull this idea upward and look at the macro view, how does this deeply individual, intimate financial behavior connect to the broader societal shifts we are seeing today?
To understand the modern shame around this, we have to look at the cultural environment we are swimming in. There is a deeply insightful piece in our sources written by Stephen Howard, published on Substack, concerning what he calls modern estrangement ideology.
Let's break down that concept. Estrangement ideology, what is he referring to?
Howard discusses how modern ideological and cultural structures actively encourage very simplistic, one-dimensional thinking
about our relationships. The article notes, and we are reporting this neutrally, simply as an observation from the source on shifting cultural norms, that sometimes even holding conservative beliefs or traditional family values is now reframed by some cultural sectors as a form of emotional abuse.
And that gets used as a justification.
Yes, which is then used to justify complete family estrangement. The broader point he is making is that the goalposts of what constitutes a healthy or acceptable relationship are constantly shifting, often toward a state of hyper-individualism.
It feels like the threshold for cutting someone entirely out of your life has never been lower.
That is the core of it. Howard relies heavily on the philosophy of Herbert Marcuse, specifically his landmark 1964 book, One-Dimensional Man.
What was Marcuse's argument?
Marcuse argued that advanced industrial societies create a flattening of the human experience. They impose technological and economic rationality onto every aspect of our lives, reducing complex human beings to mere functions of production and consumption.
Like we're just gears in a machine.
Exactly. And Howard applies this to our modern emotional lives, pointing out the rampant commodification of relationships.
The commodification of relationships. You see this everywhere right now, especially on platforms like TikTok or Reddit. Modern culture increasingly demands that we treat our relationships, both romantic and familial, like a business ROI, return on investment.
Yes, the language has changed entirely.
We've adopted the language of human resources for our hearts. If a relationship drains you, if your emotional labor isn't reciprocated exactly 50-50, society screams at you through a megaphone of therapy speak. Cut them off. Go no contact. They are toxic. Protect your peace at all costs.
It reduces incredibly complex, nuanced, historically rich, intergenerational, or romantic relationships into binary moral categories. You are either entirely toxic or entirely healthy.
Black and white.
Yes, you are either an asset to my life or a liability to my peace. If a parent or an ex doesn't perfectly meet an ever-evolving standard of therapeutic language, the relationship is deemed disposable. You are actively encouraged to view the relationship purely in terms of what you get out of it.
What is my emotional ROI? If the ledger isn't perfectly balanced today, declare relational bankruptcy.
Exactly that. It is technological rationality applied to the human soul. It expects human beings to operate with the clean efficiency of a machine.
But the underlying human truth, the reality we wake up to every day, is that we aren't machines. Human beings aren't spreadsheets. We are gloriously, frustratingly messy.
We are incredibly messy, and that is why the emotional ledger of debt is so powerful. When an ex owes you money, or you desperately need to borrow money from them, it forces you to rebel against that one-dimensional thinking.
It pulls you back into the mess.
It forces you to sit in the discomfort of holding multiple, entirely contradictory truths at exactly the same time.
You find yourself thinking, this person hurt me deeply, they betrayed my trust, and I cannot be with them. But I still want to make sure they have a safe place to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Or, I know I shouldn't text them, but they are the only person who truly knows how much this house means to me.
You hold those contradictions because they are real. They may be your past. The relationship may have failed miserably, but they are still a human being whose history is permanently, indelibly woven into the fabric of yours. You cannot just delete a 5-year relationship or a shared trauma from your psyche the way you uninstall an app from your phone.
So, when we talk about money in this context, it is never just about the money.
Never.
It is the physical artifact of a past emotional investment. It's the tangible receipt for the time you spent together. And maybe underneath all the behavioral science and the WTR calculations, it represents our deep underlying fear of being forgotten.
That's a beautiful way to see it.
When we lend the money to the ex who doesn't deserve it, or when we watch their stories silently from afar, or when we hesitate for months to take them off the shared phone plan, it is our quiet, persistent hope that we mattered to someone, that we left a permanent mark on their life just as they left one on ours.
That is the beautiful, painful reality of the emotional ledger. It is proof that we lived and that we connected. It is a profoundly human attempt to say, you were here and you mattered to me.
We've covered so much ground today, from the tightening in your chest over a $200 text to the ancient evolutionary math of the welfare trade-off ratio. We've talked about the phantom limb of attachment trauma, the silent watchers haunting our social media, the messy, painful untangling of the sliders, and the modern, crushing pressure to treat our hearts like a corporate balance sheet.
It's a lot to take in.
But if there is one thing to carry with you as we close, it is this. The money we exchange with the people we used to love is just the echoes of our shared humanity. It is the sound of a bond resisting the silence.
A really vital shift in perspective.
If this conversation felt true for you, if something in here landed, we would love for you to subscribe to Leone Patterns so you never miss what we explore next. Leave a comment and tell us, what did this bring up for you? We read every single one. We are building a community here, people who think about money differently, not as a number to chase, but as a human experience to understand. You are not alone in this, and we are genuinely glad you are here at Leone Patterns.
It is a profound shift to view your financial life through the lens of compassion rather than pure calculation. The next time that phone buzzes, or the next time you find yourself tallying up what is owed, remember the phantom limb, remember the ledger. Ask yourself not just what the transaction costs your wallet, but what it means to your memory.
Same pace, same questions. See you then.